Hello, welcome to Flutterbug Auto. Today I'm talking about Ridge Racer 64. I'm in kind of an interesting place to review this game from as a fan of the Ridge Racer series, but only having played one game in the series previously, which was Ridge Racer 3D. It was absolutely good enough to make me a Ridge Racer fan though. But yeah, that makes this my second ever Ridge Racer, and I know that early on the series is much more well known and regarded for its PlayStation entries, so I think it'll be interesting to take a look at this game without those ones to really compare it to directly. Though I will definitely be taking a look at all of the PlayStation Ridge Racers too, so look forward to my thoughts on those soon. Also interesting about this one is that it was entirely made by Nintendo, just licensed out by Namco. So with that in mind, it's really funny seeing a game just chock full of Namco characters and stuff, and like, not a single Nintendo reference anywhere, and knowing that it's actually just straight up a Nintendo game. The DS remake did have some Nintendo character references in it though. It's really nice also that they put this game on Nintendo Switch Online, much beloved as the Nintendo Switch Online release schedule is to me. But since this game has never been re-released before, I am still really happy to have it on there. So anyway, let's get down to my thoughts on this game. First of all, I love the visual design in this game. The cars are bright and colorful and super chunky. They remind me a lot of Hot Wheels more than real cars. They all have these big chunky wheels. I love them a lot. I'm also a huge fan of old Namco arcade games, so I love all the Namco stuff on the cars, especially the Dig Dug and Pac-Man ones. I didn't get far enough in my playthrough yet to unlock it, but there's straight up just a puka you can unlock. I absolutely love that. Ridge Racer 3D similarly had some really goofy cars you can unlock towards the end too. They're really fun additions. There's also a bunch of Digipen stuff in this game, which completely took me off guard, mostly because I didn't realize Digipen had existed for that long, seeing as this game came out in 2000. And I personally only started hearing about Digipen from seeing it in ads in Nintendo Power magazine around like 2010 or 2011. But yeah, turns out actually it existed since 1988 and seems to have been included here because some of the people who worked on the game studied there. The environment design is great too, especially for the Nintendo 64. Everything's so varied and distinct. There's a great sense of place to everything. I also like the style of the mini-maps when you're selecting tracks on the menu. Look at these cute little cartoon proportion buildings, I love them so much. I also liked the little reflections of lights inside tunnels and clouds on sunny tracks. It looks really nice for the Nintendo 64. Ridge Racer 3D also had really impressive reflections for the 3DS. So I guess impressive reflections are just a running thing for the series. And while I'm on the topic of lights, I also love the little light trails that the cars leave behind. It's a small thing for sure, but I don't know, I just really like them. So it looks great, but how's it play? Also great in my opinion. Most of the game is not particularly difficult by any means. It pushes back a bit in that some tracks I had to practice on and maybe experiment to find the right car for the race, but I never felt like it was super duper difficult or anything. At least not until the way later tracks in the game. Then I started getting on multiple hour-long excursions trying to beat a single track, but even then I was still having a lot of fun, so it's cool. The game really only has one trick, which is drifting. The main skill of the game is learning to nail those drifts. And it is kind of difficult to get the hang of it first, but eventually it clicked for me and it feels so satisfying, super smoothly sailing around corners. Like, some of the sharper corners, when you hit a drift properly, you just absolutely whip the fuck around the corner. It feels great. It's definitely a game all about pure racing. There's very little in terms of bells and whistles, but it doesn't really need them with all it does in terms of style and how it feels to play. It's kind of funny because the cars in the race don't feel so much like opponents as they do obstacles. They're just like a barometer of how well you're doing in the race. Like, I could tell if I was on track to win or not based on how many cars I'd passed by the time lap 2 started. And after I wrote that, I then realized, like, that's kind of just the format of arcade racers in this style in general, isn't it? When you're making kind of a primarily single-player racing experience, that's kind of a reasonable way to do it, you know? In a lot of pure arcade racers, you'll see all of your opponents just zoom ahead of you at the beginning of the race, and then for the rest of the race, they're driving at more of just sort of like a leisurely pace as you spend the rest of the race catching up to all of them. So it's not really unique to this game, but it did just sort of click in my head that that's how these types of racing games work while I was playing this one. So it's kind of funny. Also, the cars feel just as chunky as their looks. They clonk into each other very satisfyingly and sometimes annoyingly if you're trying to pass them. But also, if you're in front of other cars and they're coming up behind you, you can move in front of them and they'll clonk into the back of you as well. So it really does work both ways. Also, speaking of annoying collisions though, I often find myself banging into walls sooner than was implied visually. honestly. Like, the hitboxes of the cars or of the walls extend past their visuals, so there was some annoyance trying to take corners as sharply as possible sometimes. Like, I'd try to get really close to the corner and then I'd hit the wall before I was visually running into it. And it wasn't the biggest issue, but I was still not the fondest of it, as you might imagine. Also, sometimes other cars just straight up go through you, which is very strange. It does make the game feel a bit jank overall, for sure. It's also really fun unlocking new cars and beating them in a one-on-one race. And also when you're in a one-on-one race, it does feel more like a race and less like the cars are just obstacles, you know? And in general, I'm a big fan of that unlocking format in racing games personally. It's especially fun in Ridge Racer because the cars get progressively better over time, so you're gonna have to play with a comparatively underpowered car. The winning means that you really outdrove them, and it feels great. The other thing that I enjoyed in this game was the absolute enthusiasm of the announcer voice. My favorites are when you're about to overtake the front runner and he's like, "You can take this guy!"
You can take this guy!
And when you win a race, he just completely freaks the fuck out.
You did it! You're the champion!
I love it so much. This game is so full of style. It's got fun environment design and adorable cars, and it feels great to play despite a few rough edges. I can't really say if it's a definitive Ridge Racer game, having played so few of them so far, but I totally had a great time with it, and I look forward to comparing it to the other Ridge Racer soon. I also can't even say if it's a definitive Nintendo 64 racing game, having only played this one, Mario Kart, F-Zero, and Wave Race, but it is a favorite for now, for sure. In the future, I'd love to check out stuff like Beetle Adventure Racing and the cruising games on the system. Honestly, the Nintendo 64 has a pretty decent number of racing games, so there's a lot I could cover on the system. Definitely let me know in the comments if there's any other Nintendo 64 racers you'd like to see me talk about. So yeah, as always, I've got more racing content on the way, including more Ridge Racer content, so I hope you'll look forward to it. See you soon!